It's 5. It's Thursday. We're live. Hi, I'm Joe Spina. Frankly Speaking, where truth is our mission, rally our realm. Said as we see it, and frankly as well. And folks, I must tell you that the illustrious Paul Crowley was trying to break up a fight between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and inadvertently got hit in the right eye. Looks pretty good there. Who won that fight, by the way?
It was an elbow from Biden.
Biden?
Yep.
Were you at that? Did you referee it? You didn't at all, did you?
Nope.
Yeah,
Nope.
you know, look
I
at
don't believe in violence.
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, for 70-year-olds, they're pretty, you know.
Yeah, they're ready to go at it. I'd like to see them, you know, like in those old-fashioned like bathing suits from like the 20s, where they had, where the guys had the tops, you know, like the tank tops, and just have them like go at it in mud.
But I want to ask the critical question, you folks out there. I never hear 781-780-9460. Who would win in a fight between Joe Biden and Donald Trump? Where would you put your money?
Donald Trump would make mincemeat out of him.
And where do you, how do you play that one?
I don't think either one of them could fight their way out of a paper bag.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yep. Tough talkers, but.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I don't think either one of them have ever gotten into it in the street.
Right.
Like I remember when I was in high school, it was like every day after school you had to fight somebody.
Right.
Well, obvious, take a look at your eye. But here's one thing. Isn't toughness a state of mind?
Yes, it is.
Everybody likes to think they're tough.
So I've seen some folks that aren't all that big, but they have a certain state of mind.
Right.
And that's it. You can go and beat him if you wanted to.
Yep.
Right.
And by the way, Donald Trump's not a small guy. He's 6'3". He's 230. They say he's obese. He's a little overweight, but he's a big guy. You know, he's not a slouch. Let's get that Frankly Joe up there. I was struck, Paul and Darren.
So was I.
I was struck by the word sparse. And when they were talking about school committee meetings and focus groups, and they always say sparsely. And so I put a few things up there. I want you to comment. Sparse, citizens attending school committee meetings. That's true, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And sparse, citizens attendance at city council meetings.
Yep.
Sparse, the thing you talk about, Paul, is this narrow group of people that are organized, and sparse, but they overrule the vast majority.
Because they're organized, right?
Yeah, go with that.
And I want to talk about, you know, the night that you guys had the public hearing to decide about the $14 million deal with the state and all that kind of stuff. And a parade of people in opposition to it got up and complained that every single time they turn around, you guys, you know, us, when I was there, whatever, you let things get bad, and then you come to us and say it's a crisis and you got to fix it, right?
Right.
But they only come
When it's
it's crisis too. So,
Yep.
so I would challenge everybody back home, anybody that's listening, tell your friends, tell your family, if you really want to get the desired results out of city government, you have to participate yourself.
Yep.
You have to show up to these things. You have to show that you got passion for it.
That's the key.
Right.
Sparseness is not a good thing. It's counter democracy, actually.
You know, and here's the perfect analysis. Do you remember the whole debate over tearing down Manning Bowl and building Manning Field?
Biggest council meeting I've ever been
Charlie O'Brien wanted to use the gunite. Remember that?
Right.
It was
Yep.
that.
Right.
He wanted to see everybody would. It was a foot of snow outside. It was a Tuesday, and there were 400
Standing
people
room
in the room.
only.
400
Right.
people in the room. And every year we do a $300 million budget, and we get a handful of people, and half of
So
them are
what's your
reporters.
point? Your point is that an organized minority can gin up. Same thing happened with the two schools, didn't it, Darren? On the vote of
Not
these
as
two.
much.
Not
like
as
that.
much, right.
But a small group of people
Right.
organized
Right.
and made it out of proportion
Yep.
to their numbers, correct?
Yep. Special interest group. Yeah. There was maybe a handful of people that got everybody fired up, upset, and that started the, vote no on
And that's
two
it.
new schools. Yeah.
Standing room only. A little play on words here, if we can get that up there. Mayor McGee, and he said, and this is thankful. He said, wise. We're hoping a process is very open process. That is, getting a new superintendent of schools. It's important that we get input from the community to allow us to make the right decisions. And if you notice, standing room only, there's not a one of those.
They all look like students.
That's
Well,
exactly that's
the
what they
guy
are.
sitting in the back is a school committee member.
Yeah.
Oh, is that Castellanos?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So here's what happens. Very few of them can vote. And here's what happened. Castellanos, by the way, coined a phrase, and I'm going to get to you. Put that back up, Pedro. Brian Castellanos said a valuable characteristic for superintendent could be emotional intelligence. Can either one of you tell me what the hell emotional intelligence is? Can you?
No.
When they come up with this one?
I like it.
No.
Do you like emotional intelligence? What does it mean?
I have no idea, but I
Does
like
anybody
it.
out there know what emotional intelligence means? Paul?
No,
That's a new
the
coin
first time
for
I've
it.
ever heard that.
Be in control all the time. I don't know.
Like there's a continuum of mental health, right?
Yeah.
You have, you have good mental health to not, to an extreme where you may be, I don't know, depressed or have, mental health issues, whatever the case may be. There's a whole range there. What'd you call it? Mental. No, what'd you call it? Mental.
Emotional intelligence?
Emotional intelligence.
That's not me, that's Castellanos.
Yeah.
But you know something, I think what he means is, and this is just my thinking about it,
Yeah.
that how many really brilliant, smart people do you know? And how much common sense do they actually have? So he could mean
so you're saying that,
that if you have the intelligence, that you should have the common sense along with the intelligence.
common sense isn't very common. That's one thing's for sure.
That's a great, great,
Right.
great observation, Paul.
But on the other side of it too, sometimes it takes uncommon wisdom to really make good decisions. So you think about that.
I think that little smack on the head kind of shook up something good. I mean, you're
A
really coming out
philosopher.
with good stuff today.
So can I throw something out about the meeting, and I want to get back to the fact that people aren't attending these meetings and the value of having a meeting. Now I understand the reason why Tom, as the mayor, wanted to bring some people into the conversation, and there's even talk about hiring a consultant.
That's an
group and-
admirable thing, by the way.
Right. He wants to bring people into the equation. That being said, I think it's important that, because you hear this all the time. Darren will say it, all elected officials will say it. We were elected by the people to take care of the business of the city. Get elected, go ahead and take care of the business of the city. Now, I don't have a problem with having like a little focus group and getting people's input and all that kind of stuff. But it shouldn't be a public display. It should be, you bring people into the room, you get their input, and if you're using it for political, for the optics, that's different than if you're using it to get some real input.
Well, let's get some facts up there. In search of, if we can get that up there, in search of, because this speaks to what you're doing. There's a graphic here, in search of a superintendent. So we have the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. They're hired, by the way, to conduct a superintendent search. That's number one. We got to talk about that a little bit. This fellow named Glenn Kuchar, the executive director, he is to facilitate community focus groups. Now, they had the first one on Monday night, the graphic that we showed. Here's what they talked about, Paul. Nutrition, overcrowding, and curriculum.
Who talked about that?
That was the issues that they thought were paramount on the focus.
Who is they?
They, the focus group of Monday night.
Right.
So the kids.
No, they're supposed to be for the citizens. They held a focus group Monday.
Right.
Of the
those are the
citizens,
things
open
that
to the
came out of
citizens
it?
of the city of Lynn.
But the picture of the kids that were up there, that's what
That
you're talking
night,
about.
the three pressing issues were nutrition, overcrowding classrooms, and curriculum.
So then I know the simple answer on who to hire as
My point to you is, what's
So
the important?
the
Why are
super-
those three issues so important?
well,
As opposed to the budget.
can I not weigh in on that and
Yeah.
just say that if those are the issues, then you should hire, Daddy Warbucks or Bill Gates or something, because you need somebody with a lot of money, because that's all that they're saying is what we need is more money, not that we need somebody who knows how to run an education system.
Well,
Darren, that's
but
exactly
to
what
be
you pointed
honest
out,
with
didn't you?
They do. They get a lot of money. And sometimes they don't know how to use all the money that they get.
Right.
The state dictates to us how much money we have to put in to
Yeah.
our education system. And every year it goes up. So what you really do need is, and Joe said this earlier, is a budget person. The nutrition and all of that, that's one part of it. But when you get $210 million a year, how do you distribute that money?
Right.
That's
So that the kids are getting the best education, because that's what our goal is. And I mean, our teachers are paid well, but our buildings are falling apart, and these kids are going into schools every day. And I use Marshall as an example all the time. You go into that school any time of day, and it's quiet and it's orderly, and the kids want to be in the building, and they want to learn no matter where they're at in that building. You go into some of these other schools, it's not like that. Classical is one of those schools that's like that. Even English, because of the way that they teach and how they maintain the building. But we have some schools in our city that, and they're some of the best.
So what you're saying is the environment that you're in plays a role.
Plays a major role.
Right.
You know, Paul, you said common sense, right?
Uncommon wisdom, yeah.
Back in the old days when I was still educating the youth of America, I was taking some grad courses, and I wrote a research paper using the students for their impression, and this was at the old Thurgood Marshall Middle School.
Yep.
And I had them write what they thought were the assets and the weaknesses. And I also asked them to draw them, because when you draw, you know, you don't have to be an artist, you can see things, what they fear. These kids were fabulous. You know, they talked about dirty, dingy, this, that, and the rest of it. And I had them design the school. You were right on target. The school they designed is the Thurgood Marshall Middle School that you fought for. Airy, clean, aesthetically pleasing.
Right.
Anything grows very well. I mean, a tomato is a tomato is a tomato, but you put a tomato that's well lit, sunlight, fertilized, it's going to be a lot better than one in a, you know, in a dingy spot, right?
Right. Yep.
That's what you're saying.
That's exactly what we're saying.
There, by the way, I want to let you folks know there will be a couple more. There was one today, a focus group meeting regarding the search. And tomorrow, I'm sorry, Saturday the 24th, I don't know the time of it, and there'll be another one on Monday, Paul.
But also, you can go online,
And find,
and there's 6 questions
really?
that they ask you online. So I haven't done it yet, but
So who generated these questions? Was it that Mass Society?
It was hired by, that's what I tried to tell you, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees was hired, so they're overseeing the whole thing, and this fella, Glenn Kuchar, their executive director, is quote-unquote the facilitator. And their hope is, you know, to involve everybody, come up with the best candidate. I tend to think that the key to the school department, insofar as its budget is so big compared to, what's it, 50%, Darren?
More.
It's more than 50%, folks. Understand that. If you can just get a 5% savings, which is not horrific, that doesn't really do a lot of damage. We don't have a structural problem anymore. Just 5% of the school budget.
5% is about $7 million.
More.
Yeah.
It's more. It's about 12 million. Because
okay, you're right,
is it
yeah.
230? What's the school
Yeah,
budget?
210.
210. 5% is 10
A
anyways.
little bit more than.
When I first started at GLIS, the first thing I said to the board was that I was going to reduce expenses by 2%.
Yep.
We had a $50 million budget. 2%. It's $1 million.
I know.
And you know what? I was able to do it in 3 months because it was there for the picking. It was the low-hanging fruit type stuff.
So you were selected as the executive director of GLIS, right?
Yeah.
You had a $50 million budget, and you went in there and you did a 2% audit, so to speak, without losing any services and saving them.
Actually, services got better as a result.
Okay, so are you telling me that that model wouldn't work for the school department?
Well, they have a lot more.
Mandates?
Yeah, you know, the
right.
prescriptive
Right.
kind of relationship
That
with the
may be
state.
Everything from the testing to the curriculum.
However,
Yeah.
and here's the kicker is, and this goes back to before McHugh was the CFO or the business
Upton.
agent. When Steve Upton, he used to tell me, you know, whether winking or not, he said that they would, anywhere that they had a little bit of latitude, they would plow the money into it so that they could take it when they needed it. And there were always these little, he used to call them cookie jars,
Right.
where he would have money for this, that, and the other thing. And to me, while I can see the reason why he would want something like that, I would tell you that in order to if your intention is to try to streamline the operation without reducing services, you need to have kind of a full understanding of everything that's going on. You can't be setting up these little slush
jars?
funds on the
Right.
side. Yeah,
Yeah.
Chocolate chip or oatmeal?
both.
Oh, I see.
They're not able to do that anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
We have to go to a break, and we'll be back. I never hear 781 780-9460. Give us a call. And by the way, I don't know whether we're going to do it on, which way are we doing it? Are we going to be taking calls by phone or scripted?
Well, it's the,
Yeah. Well, either way, we'll find out when we get back. Stay tuned.
it's the old number, so probably scripted.
Welcome to Lynn Community Television, your local media center. Here, we have great resources and staff to help create your own content.
Hi, I'm Jim Carrigan, host of The American Dream. I'm also a member of Lynn Community TV, and I want to encourage everybody out there who's not a member of Lynn Community TV to join the group. We have a lot of fun down here. The studio is new and it's in fabulous
Things
condition.
provided to our members are state-of-the-art studio, video and audio equipment, editing space, and a full-on training session with a staff member.
I've been involved in access television for over 20 years. Our shows have gone out to tens of thousands of people in local communities and millions throughout the world. Come on down, learn how to use the equipment to promote whatever it is you're doing.
For more information, please visit our website at www.lyntv.org, give us a call, or come on down to the station at 181 Union Street in Lynn.
And we're back. We have a call on the line, but I just want to mention before we get to the caller that because of a lack of a little gizmo, we won't be able to do the telephone calls, Paul and Darren.
Is that the technical version?
Yeah, but we're going to iron it out. And sooner or later, folks, we'll get it done. Don't forget, this is a great show in any event. Caller, get it up there. You read it.
The city was wrong to send out tow trucks for this non-storm. Citizens should be reimbursed a $320 fee for being towed. Also, Lynn City Hall should have wheelchairs for citizens conducting business.
Go ahead. But did
Is
they
there more
actually
to
send
it?
trucks out to tow people?
Yeah, they did. And the decision is made, once they call a snow emergency and the blue lights are on,
Yeah.
you have to get your cars off the road.
Right.
And what they have found in the past, and there's been numerous meetings about this, that you have to be consistent. And if you're not consistent,
Of course.
people won't know whether or not, well, should we or shouldn't we?
Right.
They start in the Highlands, towing the toughest part of the city. Then they go to the main roads, then they go to the side streets.
Right.
So, in effect,
And right up until this morning, everybody was expecting 6 to 8 inches of snow in Lynn.
right, I know that because I lost out on 4 hours of tutoring today.
right.
And, you know, look, you win some, you lose some. But
Right.
it's stated that if you have a snow emergency, get the cars off the road.
Simple.
That's
Yeah,
simple.
right.
And we provide there's 27 schools, and I think out of the 27, that at least 20 of them have parking lots that we allow people to park in.
And,
So-
and I would just say that, I mean, I don't know, I saw the person's name who had the question was Ronald. Ronald, if you were one of the ones that got towed, you know, shame on you. You should have known better. You didn't know that it wasn't going to snow when you were parking out there.
Right.
I want to mention something, by the way. It was just fascinating. Tim Fenton talked about a young kid, I think he's in your ward because his last name's Perry, Justin Perry, who is a meteorologist from Lynn, a young kid, who's got a following of about a few thousand folks on Facebook, and apparently he's a pretty good little meteorologist. So I don't know how he called this one. If anybody knows how Justin Perry called this one, or maybe Ronald should call Justin Perry.
Right.
Huh?
Yeah, I mean,
Because the
I-
weatherman definitely didn't.
Do you,
get
but
this
by the
one.
way, do you know about this kid, this meteorologist, that may be in your ward?
Well, there is a Perry family in my ward, and Fred is the head of that family, and Fred's a smart guy, so I'm figuring maybe
Yeah.
he could be related to
The
him.
apple doesn't fall far from the
Right,
tree.
yeah, yeah.
There's something that happened, Paul. I want to thank you because you brought light to this. You got an update on what was happening with Airbnb for the State House, and I understand that it's under consideration. We can put that up, Pedro, the Lynn update. If I understand the bill from the before the Massachusetts legislature is three-tiered state tax on short-term rentals. Cities and towns can impose further excise tax should they choose. It's a 4% state tax on no more than 2 rental rooms. A professional manager, that would be A, B, and B, a professional manager, right? Investor host would be 5.7% respectfully and 8% respectfully. So the investor is going to pay 8%. So if you, for example, buy a house and you're just investing and using it as an A, B, and B, you would have to pay an 8% tax.
Totally disagree with that.
Yeah, I wonder what the intent of that is. It sounds like the intent is to discourage it from happening.
Well, they're going to
Discourage what from
buying a
happening?
house.
People using their house for rentals.
Right, but
Is that what
if
you're trying to
someone
do? Or
is-
you're trying to raise money?
Right, I mean, but think about it. If you're able to go and buy a single-family home
Right.
and rent it out
Yep.
and make money and only have to pay 8% tax on it, I would do it.
Everybody would.
Exactly. So it's a
But not-
business
but-
venture.
but
and
not
you should
really.
be paying for that property.
But Darren, you do. So let's just pretend that there's no regulation at all, right?
Right.
If you buy a single-family home right next to Joe's house and you're renting it out, let's put aside also the challenges that Joe has as a neighbor who
Right.
has to deal with the
Yep.
crap. That, I mean, and I'm
Yeah,
not
I got
speaking
you.
to that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yep.
So you pay your mortgage, you pay your insurance, you pay your taxes, you pay your maintenance, and that's, let's just call that $20,000.
Yep.
And then you rent it out during the course of the year for $30,000. You made $10,000. You pay taxes on the $10,000.
Yep.
So it's not as if it's a free ride.
But it's you paying the federal government and the state those taxes.
Right.
If the city has to go there because there's an issue, police, fire, ambulance, or anything, you're using the city services. And what you're doing is you're basically running a business.
But that's the same thing for a
probably in
three-family.
an
Yes, but you
R1,
have no
which is
control
not
of-
zoned for business.
But
But
wait a minute,
but neither
Paul.
is
There's
a-
a safety factor involved there. You don't know
I
who the
asked you to
people are coming in and out of that.
But I asked you to put those issues aside just for
no,
the
no,
purpose
you
of the
can't put
conversation.
those issues aside.
We can bring them in
because
afterwards, because what I want to do is I want to say that
right, first of all, let me
somebody
just
with a
say- hold it,
three-family
hold
house,
it,
how
hold
is
it,
that different?
Hold it. I want to get the last point. There's an establishment of a state registry for short-term rentals. Why they're doing that is important, don't you think?
Yep.
That they're going to
Definitely
register them.
important, yep.
All right. Now, my issue is not, we have B&Bs as it stands now. Regulated, nobody complains about them. We have a lot of rooming houses and stuff like that. The problem is you can't take and go into a residential area.
Not
nilly
yours
willy.
anyway.
Huh?
Not yours anyway.
Well, that's the problem. It's zoning.
No, but I mean, it's, look, I'm not going to say I don't care that there's one in your neighborhood, but it doesn't matter as much to me as it does to the neighbors where you are, right? It's as simple as that. I mean, people in your ward weren't worried, or people in your street weren't worried when they were going to put a classical down the street from my house. They weren't.
Well, actually,
Were you worried?
I went and spoke
there
against
is
it.
no Airbnb on my street. That's number one. Number two, the issue is whether or not we or the city can regulate in R1, in our ordinances. If you take a careful look at them, they will tell you you can't do it. It's illegal. That's the whole point. So, you know, I don't have a problem with anybody making money. I'm a capitalist. But there's a right way to make it and a wrong way to make it. I mean, you're not going to be able to put the pot parlor in front of Avon School, can you?
No.
Why? Why is that,
Too
Paul?
close.
Why can't we have liquor places near schools and stuff like that? Why do we do that? It's common sense. Common sense that you don't have, quote-unquote, vices around innocence.
Well, true.
But there's a lot of other factors too.
What was that?
There's a lot of other factors too.
Sure.
That most of the streets in our city were built long before everybody had 2 or 3 cars in their
Right.
house. So there's parking issues.
They didn't have any. They were riding
Right.
horses.
Well, but I mean, even when we were kids,
Yeah.
I mean, every house, if you had a car in your household, you were pretty lucky.
Right.
And until we started growing up, and kids turned 16, 17, you got an
Right.
old jalopy and you fixed it up. So you might have had 2 cars in the house, but it was very rare to have more than that. Now everybody in my house has a car, and I have an extra car because I have one for work. So in my house where there's 4 people, there's 5 cars.
So
Now,
we
if
should.
I'm renting out a room to somebody, I'm bringing in another car.
Right.
And if I'm renting out 2 rooms,
So I mean, so you do the fairness test, right? And should you be paying the same amount of taxes as somebody who only has one car on the street. I mean, you know, I mean, you can make a million different, you can look at it a million
Sure.
different ways.
But I'm not, my house
But
is my
you already
investment
do,
for
Paul.
me and my family, not for me to be making money at the expense of my neighbors or my neighborhood.
But don't you pay an extra excise tax to the city by having extra cars, Paul?
You do.
So in effect, you are paying more.
Right.
Okay? I mean, you're paying more insurance, you're paying more excise
He's
got
looking
tax.
me
for another
there.
black guy, I
You
think.
got
Yeah.
me there.
He's,
All right.
he's looking for
So,
another black guy.
Here is the point. The point is we have regulations, common sense regulations you talked about, in that people go to a single-family neighborhood for stability purposes. If you undermine stability, you corrode the neighborhood. And that thing that we ought to be doing more is preserving neighborhoods.
Look, I
And
just
we're
wanna-
not doing
can,
that.
Can I just be clear? I'm not saying that I oppose your position on this and that people should be allowed to do Airbnb anywhere they want. I'm just trying to bring up the other side of the conversation.
Yes, but the other side of the argument... that
I don't have a position.
Well, do you think fair and balanced is a good way to fly? Because there's no such thing as fair and balanced policy. Seesaw isn't like that. Okay? Somewhere along the line, you got to make a decision and go with it. You don't like the fact that you're going to have to raise taxes April 1st, do you? And you know you're going to have to, right?
Yep.
You know you're going to jack up the valuation of the houses,
Right.
and everybody in the city, all these folks are taking to pay more, including me and you, Paul.
The last thing any elected official anywhere in the world
Do you wanna
wants
do it?
to do.
Right,
But
that's
you
why
want
they
to-
always do it right after the election.
Right.
Whatever. Yeah, that's true. So,
It's
yeah.
actually illegal to do it right after the election.
Let's get to, since we're on this topic, let's get to the public hearing that's taking place a week from Tuesday, right? The
Well,
27th.
A week from this past Tuesday.
That's very good, right.
Next-
You're right.
next
The
Tuesday.
27th, we're going to have a public hearing, Pedro, on pot shops. And at issue, I'm just going to outline it, and then you can talk to it, 6 pot shop locations.
Yeah.
You need a 2/3 vote of the city council in order to make a zoning change.
Right.
And April 1st, the state will be accepting applications for the establishment for July 1st openings. That's accurate?
Right.
But you told me there's a new wrinkle.
Yeah, up until this past week, every council was going to pick one area in their ward, in all the wards in the city, to put a pot pile. But the more we looked at it, that's more like spot zoning. And there are a couple of wards that we couldn't do that in, that there was actually nowhere to put them. So what we decided to do, we're opening it up to the entire city, that anybody can apply for anywhere in the city, probably even including Ward 6, where there's already 2. But the difference is you're gonna have to come to the city council to get a special permit. So if you wanna open up one of these, whether it's a pot parlor or a recreational store to buy it, then you're gonna have to come to the council, have a public hearing where the neighbors are gonna be able to come, kinda like the superintendent thing.
I want to stop you on something because something came to my mind. You said pot parlor or a dispensary. Are you telling me that you have 6 licenses available, correct?
Right.
6,
'Cause
not
we
counting the
already
medical.
have 2.
2.
Right.
So you're telling me that you can have 2 different options as to how you dispense. You can either go
Right
to
now,
a
you can only
location,
do
sit
the
down, and,
recreational.
like a bar,
No,
or
right now you can only do the recreational.
on the recreational side, it's going to be like a package store and a bar.
Correct.
It could be either or.
No, it'll be like a package store.
So the pot parlor is not you can go in, sit down with buddies and smoke up a storm.
That's in the future, right?
But right now, it's strictly like a package store. You go in and you can buy your recreational stuff to smoke at home or
Right.
wherever.
And the way the law is written, and what the state is suggesting actually, is that it not be within 1,000 feet of a school. We have to, within 500 feet, I'm sorry, and we have to change that because it'd be impossible for anybody to open in the city, so we're looking at 250 to 300 feet.
By the way, since it's now legal and recreational, does that mean that city employees, teachers, et cetera, can smoke and they don't have to take drug tests or any of that stuff?
No.
No.
In fact, if you have a medicinal purpose for smoking marijuana and you drive for Gliss and you are randomly drug tested and they discover marijuana in your bloodstream, even if it's for medicinal purposes, we have to terminate.
That's interesting. We have to take a break. We'll be back. Stay tuned.
Once you shoot your first needle, you become feeble. Your body begins to ache. and deteriorate. If you don't seek help fast, your inner voice will wheedle you into doing worse than that.
Start a story. Adopt at theshelterpetproject.org.
And we're back, just stoked up on outside here. No, wait a minute. Let me get this straight. When it comes to this phrase, pot parlors, is misleading.
Right.
Because we're not talking about going in on a lounge, smoking up a storm with your friends and getting high as a kite. We're talking about going to a place that dispenses
Buying it and taking it home.
as a package, as an analogy.
And there are a couple of pot parlors that have opened up where you can't buy it, but you can bring it in and you can smoke it there. And it's in a club-type atmosphere. You have to pay a fee every month
to get in.
To get in.
So, Paul, you were saying something that's telling. So even though marijuana is quote-unquote legal, recreational marijuana in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, nevertheless, there's restrictions on its usage. You're terminated as a driver for GLIS if it's in your bloodstream. What about on other aspects of employment?
Think about it from the alcohol perspective.
Yeah.
If you're an employee for anybody and you show up to work intoxicated,
Right.
it's a legal thing. You can drink all you want, but you can't do it on company time.
Right.
The difference in this case is alcohol generally kind of gets out of your system after 24 hours or so, whatever. Marijuana sticks around for days.
60 days.
60 days or something, yeah. So.
Now, and the other factor is, too, that if you're in the room with someone and they're smoking, you're inhaling the chemicals that are in that. So you could even test.
You could have trace elements.
Yeah,
So,
you could test.
That's an interesting point. So you can't walk down the street and smoke a joint publicly, can you? Because
Actually,
you're
they
going to
can give you a
affect
ticket
people
for that
in the
right now.
You're going to be affecting people.
Right.
Right.
Let me ask you, I think I mentioned this last week or the week before. I mean, have you noticed a surge in the aroma of marijuana?
It's everywhere.
I mean, everywhere I go, I smell it now.
Yep.
Well, that's the point. But is that going to be legal now that you can smoke anywhere?
Well, you can smoke anywhere.
You can?
Well, not in public buildings, you won't be able to.
Are they going to
schools,
put the
things
same
like that.
restrictions on smoking marijuana as they do on cigarettes, for example?
That's an interesting point.
And I think they should.
When I was in
yeah.
I was in San Francisco about 5 or 6 years ago, and back then I was smoking cigars, and I took off for lunch and went for a nice walk, and I went into a little park that was down the street. This is in San Francisco, the progressive bastion of the world, right? And so there was a nice empty park bench, nobody sitting there, but it was a nice sunny day. It was like 60 degrees, so I sat down there and lit up my cigar, and I was just relaxing, smiling at people as they walked by. And a park ranger came over and maybe put it out. Can't even smoke outdoors.
That's the same city, Paul, that's got syringes all over the place and human feces.
Right.
So San Fran is not the paradigm that you want to copy or mention. Our number here is 781-780-9460. Talk about common sense. There's absolutely none in San Francisco, generally, and California is getting that way. 3 M's, and I'm not talking about Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse or candy. The 3 M's, McCabe, Mueller, and Moulton. Why, Paul? First of all, you see that guy there, McCabe? That guy lost his pension, right, and was fired as the deputy director of the FBI for lying to his own agency.
Yep.
So what does our Representative Moulton do?
I'll
He says,
hire
I'm
you.
going to hire him. Why, Paul?
Give him that extra day's pension so that he can.
So he's going to benefit a person that should be vilified and possibly on his way to jail.
Yeah.
Is this the mindset now?
Yeah. So I would just say that Seth Moulton appears to be, in this particular situation, looking to ingratiate himself with the deep state, you know? I mean, that's really all this is. I mean,
So the guy in the middle, the deep state guy in the middle, otherwise known as Mueller, the special counsel, are you aware of the fact that he was a U.S. attorney here in Boston, Massachusetts in the 80s?
Yeah, he told me that. He was involved in that thing with Howie Winters and...
No, not Howie Winters,
and-
Whitey Bulger.
and Whitey Bulger.
They empowered Whitey Bulger.
Yeah.
He was their snitch under Conley. And they put 4 people, he did, in the can for murder that they didn't commit. 2 died in jail. 2 finally got out.
Correct.
And they awarded him $100 million. This guy put him in the can.
Right.
Now, I would be very leery, and he has a deputy within his organization that's famous for, I think it was Anderson, one of these consulting some company. All of the guys
Arthur Anderson, he put them out of business.
put him out of business. All the executives went to jail, and it was overturned, and they were innocent.
Right. So, and that brings up you bring up a very interesting point, and that is that just like when you watch that TV show Law and Order, you know, it's like they go into the courtroom, even if it's Perry Mason and the other guy, they go into the courtroom, and it becomes, for the individuals, it becomes winning and losing. It isn't about truth and justice. It's
Right.
about winning and losing. And Mueller sounds to me like a guy who's more interested in winning than he is in seeking justice.
Sure, and they're threatening everybody. I mean, General Flynn's life is ruined, and he didn't even lie, and he had to plead to lying so as not to go bankrupt.
Right.
I mean, that's what he did. He copped the plea in order to take the less pain. They had him in a vice
Right.
and squeezing, and he hadn't done anything.
And that's
yet,
just it,
McCabe becomes a hero to Moulton.
Right. This is what happened. I remember this happened back when Deval Patrick first ran for governor. You remember the Attorney General was Riley or O'Reilly?
Oh yeah.
Remember? So he was the Attorney General at the time, and he was running along with Patrick and Chris Gabrielli.
Right, he's running for governor.
You're right. So the 3 of them running for governor, and all of a sudden, to get a big splash, Riley does this. He indicts 6 people from aggregate industries for, you know,
For no reason?
selling, for recycling the cement for the big dig. You know, it wasn't meeting the standards. But what they do, they fight all low-level people. Actually, a kid that lives right here in Lynn, who I know personally, a little younger than me, nice kid, young family, making 40 grand a year just dispatching. He had an ankle bracelet on for 2 years, had to do community service. They barged into his house at 5 o'clock in the morning, arrested him in front of all of his kids and all that kind of stuff, all just so that he could get a big splash in the newspaper because he wanted to run for governor. This is what people are willing to do. They don't care about the wake of their efforts.
That's
Some
the
people.
danger. That's the danger.
Yeah.
Our number here is 781-780-9460. What do you think about the fact of your rep wanting to give a job to someone who rightfully shouldn't get a pension, and that would have cost taxpayers about $1.8 million, by the way, because if you reinstated him, that's what he would have got. But you know what he's sitting on, by the way? What do you think McCabe's sitting on? $11 million. It isn't like he's broke.
Right.
He's got all types of exotic cars, you know.
So how does an FBI, a career FBI agent make $11 million, or was he born wealthy?
Repeat the question.
How does a career FBI agent who never made more than, say, $175,000
Make
make
he was a
$11
lawyer.
million?
He was a lawyer in his own right.
All right.
Yeah. And
But you don't get paid as a private lawyer when you work for the FBI for 21 years.
no, his wife is also, and she ran for the his wife ran for the Senate in Virginia and received $700,000 from the Clinton machine.
Yeah.
And he was supposed to
Disclose
tell
it,
people that.
and he didn't.
So, yeah, right. So it wasn't like he was an honest broker. We're going to get Leonardo da Vinci, a friend of mine, by the way.
Yeah.
We're going to put some of his famous quotes up there and have you fellows respond to it. Our number here is 781-780-9460. The greatest deception men suffer is from their own opinions. What do you think?
Oh, man.
Comment on that one?
I got to take a hit for that one because I'm definitely
How about
impressed
as
with
a
my own opinions.
well-spent day brings happy sleep, so a life well spent brings happy death? You like that one, huh, Darren?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was up pretty late last night thinking about the meetings that we had yesterday. So.
How about simplicity is the ultimate sophistication?
Yes, I would agree with that.
You agree with that?
Yeah.
Nature never breaks her own laws. I love that one. And we break them all the time, right?
Yep.
People react to fear, not love. They don't teach that in Sunday school, but it's true. I think that is something we ought to think about. You know, all of this peer mediation and all of this stuff we do now, the soy boy stuff, doesn't work.
So somebody once asked me what my key to success was, and I said fear of failing.
What was that?
Fear of failing.
Absolutely. Fear is the key,
Yeah.
the motivator. There are three classes of people, Paul. Those who see when they are shown, those who do not see.
Yes.
That's a good one. Where there is shouting, I love this one. Where there's shouting, there's no true knowledge.
Right.
Nature, I like this so much I repeated it. Nature never breaks her own laws. Nothing can be loved or hated unless it is first known. How about this one, Paul? Marriage is like putting your hand into a bag of snakes in the hope of pulling out an eel. So said Leonardo.
I pulled out an eel.
You like that one, huh? Folks, you know, we come up with a few things here. We're in the stream of consciousness section of our show. Our number is 781-780-9460. We're going to be able to get those phones working shortly when the technology is up to speed. By the way, did you put a phone call in to Steve Jobs up in heaven, right? To come down here and help us out. What else besides the public hearing next week on pot parlors is happening?
Well, the labor movement is looking for an ordinance so that it's called the theft wage ordinance, and I guess there's a pretty big problem where you have contractors, and not just contractors, but in the working world, where they hire people who don't know all the laws and they don't get paid what they should be being paid. So they're trying to pass an ordinance, and it'll be first of its kind in the state, and the Attorney General's office is actually coming to speak, I'm assuming coming to speak in favor of the ordinance. And that's going to be a pretty big thing, too. Two big things in one night.
Okay. I want to go back over this so I clearly understand it. You're putting it on as you got it specifically for
Wage
theft.
what was that?
Wage theft. So it's like if you hire a landscaper and you got people out there cutting your grass, the owner of that company may not be paying minimum wage, may not be paying the workman's comp, other benefits.
This is
that
like
they're
taking
entitled
tips
to.
from somebody that works for you, right?
Right.
Okay. That's a good law. That's a good ordinance.
Yep.
How do you feel about that, Paul?
I think the intent is great. I don't know how the city's going to be able to enforce it.
Right, that's the problem. And
That's-
that's why
enforcement,
the state is actually looking at doing something, and it's got to be done somewhere. Lynn, being the city of
This is like banning AR-15s.
But wait a minute. But
It
at
isn't
least
gonna
it's-
do
but
anything.
at least it's bringing it to the attention.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a good. Paul, let me ask you something, because it was kind of fascinating. I hope I didn't lose the train of thought on it, but it was it had to do with it might affect what you do. Yeah, it came back to me. The President of the United States is pushing an issue, and pining on this, Darren. He's pushing an issue is the right to try, and that has to do with if you are terminal and there's some experimental drug out there.
Yeah.
You have the right to try it,
Right.
whether it works or not. What do you think of that?
Totally agree. Totally.
Hey, let me tell you something. When I'm down in my last roll, and you tell me you take the dice away from me and I can't even roll, what good is that? I mean,
Right.
give me a shot.
So both of you think that this right to try is well worth.
Right. Yeah. You probably. I mean, it has to be probably managed kind of way.
Yeah.
You know what gets you to that point and that kind of stuff. I
I
mean,
mean, we have to really look at the medical world because they've advanced so much in keeping people alive. And you look at how many people there are in nursing homes who have dementia, Alzheimer's, and they have no quality of life at all. But yet they take all the money of the person, all the money of the family. And they're doing everything they can to help these people, but they have absolutely no quality of life, and they're eliminating all of their wealth that they've accumulated.
So the suggestion, and we have a call, we'll get right to it. So the suggestion is, the dangerous part of that is euthanasia.
Right.
Yeah. Caller, Paul, this could be a groundbreaker and set the precedent. Consider the new fact that a doctor prescribes cannabis, but a doctor does not prescribe alcohol. Simon, can you make sense of that?
Can you put that back up?
Pedro, can we put that back up, please?
This could be a groundbreaker and set the precedent and consider the new fact that a doctor prescribes cannabis.
But after April
So,
1st, they won't have to do that.
The fact of the matter is that we are operating under a contract with a customer that we have to comply with the contract. So it's not about what this being groundbreaking and trying to change the rules. I often just look at this as just another one of those crazy things in life. It's like the sex offender registry and all that kind of stuff, right? So somebody is level 3 sex offender, and what does that mean? They are
they're
likely
violent.
to reoffend, right?
Well, yeah, but it also means that it was a violent.
Right, so, and likely to reoffend is
Right,
part of it as
right.
well, right?
Yep.
So they say, he's all yours. They send him back into the community, you know,
There's a distinction.
and then we say, well, we don't want him in our community, and then they say you must, and it's all. I mean, it's crazy.
Right. We just went through that. The city was
Yep.
challenged
Let's talk
with
about the
ordinance.
distinction, though. There's a distinction in the question, because it's kind of, it's a nuance. Where he talks about a doctor can prescribe cannabis, and then he talks about alcohol. But alcohol is legally recreational, as now pot is. So he should have separated that.
I
He's
would
talking
like to
about
be-
medical marijuana is prescribed by doctors.
Right, and I would like to be able to say that in the instance where somebody was randomly drug tested.
Pardon?
When somebody was randomly drug tested.
Right.
And found marijuana in them, if they had a medical clearance to have that drug, and in other words, a good reason, and they were otherwise a good driver, and you know, wasn't really a safety issue, that I would want to maintain that driver. But contractually, I can't.
But also, when they're testing for drugs, you can't tell if it was specifically marijuana.
Like
they
you were
were
saying
doing.
earlier, right? Yeah.
So, I mean, because there are so many different chemicals that are in all the different drugs, and they're in all the opioids,
But we have
cocaine.
to we have to legislate, or we have to put regulations on a bias towards safety. And if certain situations you know, violate to some level, we have to accept it. You know, the greater good is that folks should not have any substances
guilty
in their body,
man goes free.
driving or flying a plane, or any of that type, or machinery.
Right.
You know, heavy-duty machinery and stuff like that. You know, that which is really dangerous, you know, these guys that drive all night long on these big trucks, I mean, those guys would take them bennies for
Right,
years.
yep.
And
Bennies.
keep themselves, well, to keep themselves awake.
Yeah.
You know, they were...
Yeah, then they had to regulate that. They had to say that you can only be on the road for like 12 consecutive hours without
Exactly.
taking an 8-hour break or something
Right.
like that, right?
Because, you know, and, you know, one of those big suckers, 45-footers, going 70 miles an hour, and a guy falls asleep, see you later, you know? You know, I was going to ask you, we got a couple of minutes. This is out from left field. But do we have any ordinances in the city of Lynn regarding structure, contractors, for example? That overpass down in Florida, boom, went down because of bad inspection and shoddy.
Right.
Do we have stringent rules and
The
regulations in
state,
Lynn?
it's all state.
It's all state?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you piggyback on
building
top of
code.
that?
Well, I mean, we can, like if a carnival comes into Lynn,
Yeah.
it's the city inspectors that go in, check all the food, vendors, and take a look at the rides, but it's also the state inspectors that come in and take a look at the rides as well.
I'm not so sure that the city inspectors would have the expertise, that's not to knock
Right.
them, on the mechanical aspects of a
Right.
carnival. But when it comes to, I mean, we had a really good building department in the city of Lynn for years,
Right.
and the Callens ran it, right, Frankie?
And all the building inspectors back then had what you call Class 1 building
Licenses, yeah.
So
They were good
know how to-
mechanics, yeah.
Yeah, they could, which means that they could build anything with steel or concrete or masonry. So a carpenter back then had a class 3, and it's changed so much now that
Yeah.
the amount of testing that you have
So
to do.
We
Can I
got a
just-
caller, Paul.
Oh, okay.
Caller? Get that caller up there?
Okay, so can I just say that,
We're going to a break and then take the caller, or what?
No, we need a minute.
Did you pick up on that?
Yeah, they need a minute
Yeah.
before they can put the collar up. They're
Oh.
trying to get it up.
Okay, I'm sorry, Paul. We finish it
no,
up.
I was just going to say that, that thing that happened down in Florida was that tragic. I mean, you've seen that happen, and the interesting thing about that was there was a voicemail message left that basically said there's a problem. They identified the problem, but it's not
Right.
a safety issue.
Yeah.
It
We
just-
got the caller,
it
by
just,
the way.
Just
Here-
goes to show you that sometimes there are things that happen, you know?
Why reward partners new permits for their village on Linfield Street when they are putting every Lynn resident at risk by closing Union Hospital? You know, Paulie E., I happen to like that question a whole bunch.
And the problem is that Partners is a private company,
Yes.
that there's not a lot that we can do to keep them here. But one of the things that they've agreed to is to build the emergency care unit,
Urgent care unit.
urgent care unit. So they're still going to be able to provide services, I believe, for more than 70% of the people that they were providing services for in the past. And I've gone to a lot of the different meetings that they've had, and even though it doesn't make sense to the community, it makes sense in a business way what they're trying to do. They're trying to centralize all of the different medical things that you go to the hospital for, whether it be the heart,
Right.
lungs, cancer, brain, eyes, whatever it may be. Because the way it is right now, that if you went to Union Hospital and you needed dialysis, they'd have to ship you up to Salem. The reason I know that is because my friend, our friend,
Yep.
Paul, they just did that to yesterday. So they're trying to centralize all the medical. I wish they had done it in Lynn, but unfortunately we didn't have the room
Right.
for them to expand.
Can I just throw something out too as well, and that is that, you know, we were joking earlier that I got a black eye and I got a dislocated finger from playing basketball. So I took an elbow and I cracked my hand on somebody's head and whatever. And so that was Monday night. Now Tuesday during the day, it was bothering me all day. And then finally I said, you know what, I got to go get this checked. 10 years ago, it was the emergency room.
Right.
Now I go to the urgent care. I drive down Paradise Road and go into Swampscott, and it's right there. I go in, I tell them who I am, show my insurance card, wait 10 minutes, I get right in, they take an x-ray, they take a look at my eye, they say, you know, boy, that looks pretty bad. You should probably put some ice on that. And they send you on your way, you know. And that, to me, I would argue, and I don't know what the real numbers are, but I would argue that, let's not say today, but like 5 years ago, Union Hospital, when it was a full-blown emergency room, was getting, let's just say,
3 hour wait.
let's say they're getting 300 people show up a night.
Right.
The only ones that are true emergencies were maybe 10 or 20% of them. The others could be handled in a less emergency way, but the cost remains high. So the idea of shifting all the emergency into one area and then putting those things that are one step below that in a different area, to me, make a lot of sense. And again, I wish it was staying in Lynn too, but.
Yeah.
Paul, you notice there's a lot of convenience stores in the city of Lynn? What I notice, and it really irks me, is I see people come in and buy things, chips and beverage or whatever, and then they put a EBT card, or they hand it to them, and they're paying 40, 50, 60% more per item than they would if they just stopped up the street at any local, you know.
That's
place.
always a problem
So what
if
I'm
it's not
saying
your
to you
money.
is folks
the
that
same
don't
thing.
have any skin in the game don't really care what costs. The problem with Lynn Hospital and why we don't have it is because there were a lot of people utilizing the emergency room because they didn't care.
Right.
You know, where someone else was a little more cost efficient. If you have insurance and you had to pay a copay on it, you were a little more reluctant.
Right.
But if you're going to get a freebie, that's what happens.
And it's a good time to throw in a plug for GLIS. What we do with GLIS is we try to educate people on how things work and how they can better educate themselves around wellness and prevention, and what to do when something goes wrong. Instead of running to the emergency room, you go there when it's necessary, but if it's not, you go.
Right.
Right, that makes sense.
Right.
That's called common sense, which is the hallmark of this show, is common sense.
Right.
And we have the most common sense council president in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, sitting right here.
Thank you.
Who has a meteorologist, we think, living in his ward.
hope.
We got about 3 minutes to go for this before we go into our final, whatever it is, free fall. So,
Finale.
as it stands now, we're going to make sure that people get their fair due. That's an ordinance coming. You have the
Right,
Attorney
yep.
General, who you think will be coming to speak
Yeah,
to
and the
the
North Shore
ordinance.
Labor Council, yeah.
Right. And you'll be taking up the difficult task of where do you place these, and you must do it shortly, as a matter of fact.
Until April 1st. If we don't put stipulations and do what we have to do, we couldn't turn down anybody. They could go to any commercial spot in the city after April 1st
With no control.
with no control.
I'm interested in, and the
And one
reason-
other thing I want to say
Yeah.
is that we will get up to a 6% return on what they bring in. So if you multiply that times 8,
in other words, it's a revenue source.
a definite revenue source. On top of charging them for their space.
How
at
do
a
you
commercial
monitor
rate.
that? Is that going to be, with the electronics we have today, that should be pretty easy,
Right,
isn't it?
yep. It's the same
So
way as
there's
the
no way that
meals tax.
All right, so there's no way they can get around it, right?
Right.
This is a lot better 1% or the 0.75% meal tax that we impose.
Right.
So a revenue source is a revenue source. Speaking of which, Paul, as an accountant, you know this. I mentioned this to Council President. It appears that cities and towns and states have received more revenue than ever last year. Way up.
And also, our costs have gone way up more than they ever have.
So it's a wash
Yeah.
at best.
And especially with this past winter where we've had 4 nor'easters in the last,
So the ideal economic environment is when the rate of revenue growth, not just in government, across the board, is consistent with the rate of expense increases, right? It's an ideal that you really can't attain, but that's really what we're always shooting for, right?
right.
I'm just checking to see what time it is because it's the actual end of the show. This moves so fast. We're so good. Folks, you're going to have to wait for another great show next Thursday at 5. We're live. Have a great week.